This video was never meant to be watched. Not by the public, not by fans, and most definitely not by the family members whose lives were going to be totally turned upside down. Nevertheless, despite every opportunity, it came out raw, pure, and explosive. Shocking reality TV culture and igniting an uncontrollable fire. For years, whispers trailed Kirk Frost like a shadow. There were rumors that something evil was happening off-screen after every self-assured interview, every smile on camera, and every proclamation of redemption. Critics speculated, fans argued online, and insiders made suggestions. But late one evening, a shaky video began circulating in secret group chats, and nobody was prepared for what emerged. In just a few hours, it was everywhere. You can't unsee it once you've seen it, because Jasmine Washington was there on the other side of the video. Her deep, piercing words, her trembling voice, and her overflowing emotions are rarely recorded on tape. There was no pressure to reconcile. This was not an admission made in front of the camera. This was a very different situation. It was genuine and unadulterated, and it seemed to have been taken when neither of them knew that anyone was watching. Fans are shocked. On social media timelines, rumors, slowed-down videos, and captions exclaiming, "This changes everything," as some viewers think the tape validates long-held suspicions. Appeared. The tape, according to others, has been taken out of context. But one thing is certain. People's emotions were running high when this video became viral, and the response began immediately. Phone lines started to ring, drawing family members into the chaos. When friends picked sides, wounds that seemed to have healed were ripped raw again. As the film progressed frame by frame, the suspense only grew. Was this a mistake, a trick, or proof that the truth had always been clear? This is made even more horrifying by what happens in the final seconds of the video. The intense and thought-provoking discussion, according to fans, reveals a truth that neither of them meant to reveal. There was a brief glance, a pause, a few words, and then nothing. The family was divided. The fans were left in the dark about what was happening, and everyone is asking this simple, yet awful question at the moment. What else has not been found? If this is what unintentionally spilt, hold on. Because until we examine what truly transpired in that video, this tale won't feel the same. The night the tape was made public did not begin with chaos. It began softly, almost delicately, like a long breath before a scream. At home, Kirk was pacing the living room, clenching his jaw so tightly it looked uncomfortable, and clutching his phone close to his ear. The caller's voice faltered, despite the fact that he trusted them and shouldn't have been worried. "It's out," the voice said. Even though they were just 2 words, they were as powerful as a punch to the chest. Kirk remained still, his mind whirling as if he already knew what it meant. The video would never be removed from that room, he pledged. Across town, Jasmine was sitting on the side of her bed, staring at her phone. As messages flooded in, the screen was always shining on her face. Messages from friends, admirers, bloggers, and total strangers. While some were furious and sympathetic, others were searching for answers that she couldn't articulate. Her hands were shaking as she scrolled, her chest constricted and her thoughts loud. "This is not how it was supposed to happen," she whispered to herself. "This is not how the truth was supposed to be shared." In a matter of minutes, group discussions were taking off. Screenshots were flying, and videos of reactions were appearing faster than anyone could monitor. Startled, viewers scrutinized every second of the film, pausing, fast-forwarding, and concentrating on unfinished lines and facial expressions. Emotions were raging as long-standing disagreements surfaced online. Even those who had only seen a few minutes of mayhem were boldly taking sides. Some accused Jasmine of chasing clouds, while others said Kirk was dishonest. Jasmine was quieter, but more intense. The atmosphere at Kirk's house was tense, doors banging shut, and others said that this was only the beginning. There were voices, and even though the family had not intended to be together, fear kept them together more than love. As soon as the TV was switched on, the familiar but fuzzy picture started playing. One of the family members gasped, while another gave a gentle shake of their head as Jasmine's shaky but piercing voice echoed through the room, uttering thoughts Kirk had hoped would remain buried forever. There was more silence than shouting for a considerable amount of time before Kirk finally broke the silence with a quiet, controlled voice that was starting to break. He insisted that the movie was taken out of context, that the whole narrative was unknown, and that it was private and never meant for public consumption. But as he talked, the audience started to doubt him, and not everyone took him seriously. Not everyone wanted to. Years of whispering had laid the ground for this moment, and now the truth, or at least a version of it, was showing up everywhere. Meanwhile, Jasmine's phone rang. After ignoring it, it continued to ring until she finally answered, placing the device to her ear as though it would burn her. The person on the other end of the queue, who was close to Kirk, asked in the affirmative, accusing tone of permitting such a thing to happen, reminding them that she had nothing to reveal and that she stood to lose just as much. Jasmine lashed back and raised her voice. The argument soon became more heated as old grudges leaked out and remarks poured over one another. Outside, fans gathered digitally, updating their accounts and waiting for revelations that never came, while bloggers hinted at exclusive knowledge. By the time the conversation finished, Jasmine was crying, coated in mascara, and unable to tell the difference between dread and wrath. The tale was evolving faster than anybody could keep up with each recounting, and there was a lot of speculation on reaction channels, with some alleging that insiders had confirmed the presence of worse stuff. The family was divided both in private and in public. Late that night, Kirk finally called Jasmine, and they were silent for a little while as the queue grew. When he did speak, it was in an irate and irritated tone, and he asked her if she understood the seriousness of what she had done. The weight of their silence was almost audible between them. Jasmine immediately retaliated, reminding him of unmet expectations, private conversations, and evenings when he had held her eyes and promised that things would change. Their cries overlapped because neither of them was prepared to quit up. As the conversation went on, something shifted. It wasn't appealing, and it sounded nothing like the carefully selected stories that fans were used to. Jasmine hesitated before answering, and her silence spoke more than words could. Kirk's anger faded and was replaced by something more similar to panic when he wondered who else might have the footage. Fans would later become obsessed with the identical pause in the leaked video, thinking it held the real secret. During that phone call, Kirk realized he was losing control, and by daylight, the ramifications had affected all of their families. People who hadn't spoken to Jasmine or Kirk in years felt compelled to publicly support one of them. Friends were coerced into taking part in interviews. Strangers were texting distant relatives to ask what they thought. Every click, scroll, and headline delivered the same message, and it was difficult to undo what had been disclosed. The strong emotions that pervaded everything made it impossible to resist. I was terrified because I knew that people get totally absorbed in this kind of attention. Jasmine sat by herself as the sun rose, repeating everything in her head while staring out the window, feeling a sense of vindication as if the truth was finally being revealed. But Kirk didn't get much sleep. He watched the film again, noticing details he had missed the first time and realizing how terrible it looked on its own. And for the first time, he wondered if this was the moment that would forever define him. Fans were shocked and waiting for the hit once again when a new rumor surfaced, claiming that the film that was leaked was only a small part of a larger one with far more explosive talks and incriminating accusations just waiting to come to light. Kirk and Jasmine stood on opposite sides of a widening chasm, knowing that the next event would change everything. Before either of them could react, the rumors spread around the world. No one could confirm the existence of the longer tape, but by midday everyone was talking about it. Fans were divided in the comment sections. Some wanted the full truth, while others warned that this was going too far. Bloggers were purportedly informed about it by anonymous sources, and reaction channels reportedly received snippets. Emotions were running high, and Kirk tried to avoid it by calling his crew and demanding damage control in a harsh voice as speculation replaced facts and the story took on a life of its own. They set up meetings fast, and when individuals talk over each other, they utilize terms like narrative, spin, and crisis. Despite their careful planning, one thing was clear. Additionally, this was not your average scandal. Rather, it was one of those personal tales that emerge, permeating gaps, emotions, and people who are finally willing to talk after feeling violated. Jasmine felt that pull as well. She received calls from friends urging her to be honest before others misinterpreted it, while others suggested that she remain silent in order to protect herself. She was sitting on her couch staring at a blank notes app on her phone when the voices started returning to her, reminding her of all the rejections she had experienced and being told to wait her turn each time. It didn't feel quite right, and there didn't seem to be a solid reason. So she typed a sentence, erased it, typed another, and then flung the phone down in frustration. The simmering rage was closer to the surface when Kirk's family reconvened that afternoon. Accusations abounded, with some blaming Jasmine for everything. The tension was unbearable. Grievances unconnected to the occurrence suddenly found their way into the argument, and old family scars were rekindled long before any film was released. Others quietly admitted that Kirk had caused his own disaster. Fans were taken aback by the stillness on both sides, while the globe continued to watch from outside that house. The family disagreed not just over what had transpired, but also about Kirk's genuine identity. Silence is never neutral in this culture. People use it as a canvas on which to project their own versions of reality. Some depicted Jasmine as a strategist, while others portrayed her as a victim who had been taken too far. Kirk was portrayed as a fool, a cunning person, or a man limited by his upbringing. The chaos grew more complex with each new idea. Jasmine finally spoke up late in the evening, but it was in a private conversation that would later become legendary among insiders rather than in a public statement. She met with a reliable person who had followed the story's progress. Her voice faltered as she spoke, each word laced with anger and exhaustion. She described repeated promises that patience would be rewarded, whispered promises, and assurances that things would be better. As she spoke, the weight she had been carrying seemed to be pushing down harder rather than lighter. The following evening, Kirk received a message that made his heart race. It was dreadful, short, and enigmatic. He didn't need to identify them because he knew folks who had been there. They were talking to each other, folks who had overheard private conversations, those who might not remain silent for very long. He was afraid to learn that further videos had been leaked. It has to do with long-term decisions suddenly catching up. Despite his better judgment, he contacted Jasmine. This time, the conversation was more casual and controlled, like two individuals navigating a minefield. Jasmine took some time to answer Kirk's question about whether she planned to keep releasing, and when she did, she spoke with caution but strength. It was like a door slamming shut, Kirk thought, when she said that she could no longer defend him at her own expense. That was the last important comment that separated them. As whispers of private conversations began to circulate, fans became closer. Emotions ran high as players pieced together timelines, retrieved interviews, and examined body language from earlier shows. Things that had been harmless now felt weird. Smiles seemed forced, jokes grew darker, and the past was being altered in real time. Each new interpretation reinforced the sense that something had been kept hidden for far too long. Behind the scenes, pressure was mounting, and Kirk's allies pressed him to at least partially confess in order to reduce the damage. While some praised Jasmine for holding fast to her beliefs, others accused her of dragging things out to gain attention. Jasmine was under stress, and some urged that he wait for the storm to pass and deny everything. Every move they made was scrutinized, assessed, and amplified. One night, Jasmine watched the leaked video again because she was having trouble falling asleep. And this time she witnessed more than just the fight. She looked at her own face, the anguish she had tried to conceal, the irritation she had previously repressed. And she wept more for what had been exposed than for everything that had gone unnoticed. Secondly, she realized that no matter how things worked out, she would never be able to go back to her previous self. Kirk, on the other hand, was disturbed by the same recording for other reasons and stared at the black ceiling, remembering how nervous he had been at that same moment. The three were frightened of losing control when he heard how defensive and cornered he sounded. Everyone with a voice and a platform, including supporters and the general public, owns this story since that concern had materialized and there was no more control. They were allegedly in possession of timestamps, letters, receipts, and other evidence that could completely undermine Kirk's defense or damage Jasmine's reputation. Although no one could predict the outcome, one thing was certain. Everyone was getting ready for the next revelation that would tip the scales because the storm, SHOWED, no signs of abating. The receipt statement changed the tone of everything. Emotions and perceptions were no longer the only variables. It was time to provide evidence. Screenshots, voice notes, and timelines could support the narrative and prevent anyone from talking their way out of it. Fans were stunned once more and hurriedly turned the pages in anticipation of the surprise that everyone had promised. Like the atmosphere before a storm, the tension was electrifying. People who hadn't spoken to him in years were asking him how he was doing, and Kirk could feel it immediately. Every time his phone vibrated, a chill shot through his chest. Some were more direct, asking whether the rumors were true and whether there were any messages that may destroy him. Kirk tried to look calm by making the standard prepared comment that is made in such circumstances, but he lost confidence on his own. He knew what was there, and when he believed that confidence had been established, he knew what had been said. Jasmine was informed about the receipts by a friend who appeared both excited and afraid. "I'm excited that this could finally validate her claim. But I'm worried because once something like that is launched, there's no way to control where it ends up." Jasmine felt sick at the thought of the consequences. She wasn't innocent. She knew that telling Kirk everything would hurt not just him, but also families, reputations, and even people who had never sought to be engaged. That responsibility weighed heavily on her chest. A few days later, while their emotions were running high, Kirk and Jasmine unexpectedly stumbled into each other. They looked at each other across the room as the pandemonium around them receded and years of unresolved tensions suddenly reappeared. The public was not allowed inside. It was one of those moments when everything seemed to be predetermined. Jasmine's barricades were higher than before. She seemed guarded. Neither of them smiled, and the cameras were never able to capture Kirk's sense of tiredness and weariness. They spoke softly at first, using precise, yet controlled language. Then she let things spiral out of control. Kirk said. Jasmine accused him of trying to silence her. Their voices grew louder in spite of themselves, and their rage erupted in fits. She recalled, waiting for unanswered calls late at night. He described the risks he claimed to have taken to her. They moved back and forth. Two versions of the same story collide spectacularly. Anyone listening would have been able to sense the truth, mixed with self-preservation, the rawness and lack of polish. After the altercation, they both retreated, but the damage had already been done. Someone had seen them together. Rumor had it that they had gotten into a heated argument. When followers took the story at face value and added details that never happened, the line between fact and fiction became even more hazy.